Yeah, that's your teaching degree.
That, do you remember that? You had that taken at the pigsty, you remember?
I don't remember that because I wasn't even here.
Oh no, that's right. Well, we had someone working for us, and all the pigs were in the the big shed, and the effluent used to come out. And what's his name took that? He used to work for us. Yeah.
Andrew
Mills. Andrew Mills. Yeah.
Just recounting Dad's accident.
Well, he must have been a tough old cove.
Yes, well, he drove trotting horses for many years, and that's
yes.
quite a dangerous occupation. Could be, but quite thrilling.
Well, he obviously did it for the thrills.
Yeah, well, he liked his horses. He liked mucking around with horses.
In fact, I see you have a handsome trophy up there.
Yeah, that's through a horse, by a horse.
Don't think he ever got rich from horses though, did he?
Although he never betted, he decided he did lose a few bob at one occasion, and after that he never ever bet on the horse.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So you had some wisdom then. Can I ask, how did you meet?
Well, I came here as a junior teacher.
Yes.
In 1945, because if you wanted to be a teacher, you had to do a year as a junior teacher.
Yes.
So I came here to Woodner, and having been born at Streaky Bay, and that's when I first met Des. So I was here for 12 months and we were friends, and then I went to Teachers College for 2 years, and then the education department just sort of gave you a position, and they appointed me back to Woodner. So that's when we met up again, and
as fate would have it.
Yeah. So then that's when when I came back, and then I taught here for about 18 months, and at that time, that was in 1945, 46, 48. And so many farmers' wives around here now were school teachers. We used to say that the local boys couldn't get a girl, so they decided to marry a school teacher.
Well, if it wasn't for school teachers, I tell you what, the local lads would really be at loss for a wife, wouldn't they?
Well, exactly, yes. And there's so many ex-school teachers around here. But anyway, that was the beginning of our married life, and I became a farmer's wife.
You became a Bois.
Bois.
Oh, a Bois.
Bois, yeah, that's French. Yeah, that's how I came to be in Woodner, and I really did enjoy being. I love my experience as a school teacher, particularly at Teachers College. That was a wonderful experience. And then coming here to Woodner, and then we started having children, and we had a busy farm life. We had everything. We had horses and cattle and pigs and cows and sheep. I think we even had ostriches at one time. And for 17 years, chooks. 17 years we did a milk round in Woodner. We had a milking machine. Well, Des was very innovative. He wanted to, you had to make. If you lived on a farm, it had to be productive. So we had AIS, Australian Illawarra Shorthorn cows, and they were good milkers. And we built a dairy, and we had a 4-stand plant with the milking machines, and so that we did that for 17 years. And then the family, we had 9 children altogether, and then we used to get women to come, 2 or 3, I suppose, during my period out there when the children were small. We'd have local girls come in and live with us and stay with us and help me with the kids and help with the milk round and all that sort of stuff.
They had to give up the milk round when they ran out of kids to do the delivery.
The running.
We used to run up to the to the door and pick the billy up, and it had the money underneath, and
Yeah.
run it
yeah.
back to the ute.
Yeah. Yeah, so yes, we did that for, I think it was 17 years we had the milk round.
So you would have
And
started with a horse-drawn float? You would have started
Oh,
with a truck or a float?
no, we had, no, when we first came, when we were first married, we had a ute, a Fargo ute, I remember. But the horse period had finished by that time. And yeah, so, and then apart from that, we'd always have to go to football and tennis. I played tennis and netball, and then later golf, and now I'm still playing bowls, and I really, yeah, we've always enjoyed sport. The kids.
Well, the Montgomerys are very good at sport.
Yes, yeah.
Moves the ball across to Wayne Walker, who's having a roving commission right around the back lines and the forward lines. But number 22 for kicks the ball. There's eyes, there's a player by himself in the centre of the ground, and that player is
Ian Montgomerie.
Ian Montgomerie.
Slipped into the space.
Yeah. No, sport's always been a good part of country life.
Tell us about growing up at Chilpinunda.
Well, growing up at Chilpinunda, let me think. When we were, let me think now. We had when we first started school, we used to have to go to Kurla. That was about 7 miles away. And Colin, my brother, he didn't start school until he was about 8 because there was no access to a school. So we had a horse and cart, and we used to drive to Kurla School. That was when we were in grade 1. And then later there was they decided to build the Chilpinunda School, which was only 2 miles away from home.
So where, like, as you turn in the driveway to Chilpinunda, was it right there on the, where the golf club is now?
No, it was about, it was on a property of the Gerswiches. Well, the Gerswiches came from York Peninsula to Black Hill. That was the name of their farming property, and there were 4 families of them. So they built the Chilpinunda School, and that was only about 2 miles away from home, where we lived. And then Mum used to board the school teacher. So we had, I remember Miss Huppets came, and she later married and kept in touch with us, and we used to go on a horse and cart, and about 2 miles away, and she'd be in the cart with us, and it was one teacher school, and I think I went there until I was 12, I think. And there was one particular school teacher we had when I was in grade 7, and later he became, when I went to Teachers College, he was one of the people that was
Lecturers.
Was a lecturer at the school, and I think I really did well in the QC because I had a very good teacher, and he later proved that he was good enough to go to Teachers College and help encourage the people to be better.
So you went to Chilpinunda till year 12, then till age 12.
And then I went to Streaky Bay for 2 years, to the Streaky Bay School.
But you would have boarded in?
I boarded with Etty Bellinger. She was a Mudge from Streaky Bay. And then after 2 years, because that was in the war years, in 39, I remember 39 we used to have a little 9-hole golf course at Chilpinunda, and I recall Dad used to play, and Alwyn Mudge, his cousin, they came home to our home for dinner that night, and I always remember I was about 12, 12 I suppose, and I remember the men saying, I think things are serious, I think we're going to have a war. And that was in September, and that's when war broke out. So in that period, when that was in 1939, and then 40, 41, 42, I think I was in Streaky Bay going to school. And that's when the war was on.
So there would have been rations and all sorts going on, was there?
Possibly, yeah, rations. I remember we used to, have rations to buy sugar and all that sort of stuff. And then after that, and then the war ended in 45. So when I'd finished primary school, finished secondary school at Chilpinunda, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then Jessie and Alwyn Mudge, they were Dad's cousins, and they were wealthy graziers. They had property here, there and everywhere. So Jessie said, send Betty down to me in Adelaide. And so that's when I went to Adelaide and stayed with them for 2 years. And I went to Woodlands Church of England Grammar School then. And I think that was a godsend, because I was not a farm girl. She was clever with her hands, and I hated cooking. I hated everything about the house. I just wanted to.
Still do.
Yeah, well, I do. Well, I just wanted to get out and enjoyed life, and I think that's why I really I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to go to Adelaide and go and to continue my education.
So you must have expressed an ambition to do that early.
Well, I think
because you got sent and Auntie Pat didn't.
Well, I think Mum was a bit worried about me being home doing nothing, hating being home, and so Jessie and Alwyn said, "Well, look, send her to Adelaide."
So you're a problem child.
Well, I think I was a problem child because I hated sewing and all that sort of stuff. But I was always so grateful to think that I had the opportunity to go, and now I think that's why we sent all you kids to school, because, and Des, when his story was that when it was during the war, and Jim he joined the Air Force, and Des was home, and then Eugene won a scholarship to go to Rostrevor, and Des was cranky to think that, right, he's gone to Rostrevor. So he was home for perhaps 18 months when he left primary school here, and built up, earned a bit of money, and he sent himself to Rostrevor. He paid his own way to go to Rostrevor with Eugene. And he did extremely well. You see in that where he had Desmond Bois, he had credits in all those things at Rostrevor. He did it very, very well, and he was studious. And I think that's where he got his love for Catholicism. He's right until his death. Des was he had great faith in his Catholic faith, and he never missed Mass. Every time we did the milk round, we'd Sundays, we'd have to milk the cows, and we went to Mass.
So, just on that, you were, as the Monts, you were all Church of England.
We were all Church of England.
So, but you converted. How did that come about?
Well, we were Church of England, and we used to go to church about once a month at a little school, a Kurula Hall we used to go, and there were only about 5 or 6 families. But then when I was going to secondary school in Streaky Bay, we used to go to Sunday school every morning, or every Sunday, and the kids would dress up, you'd have your hats and everything on, and you'd go to Sunday school. And I always remember those days, and I always remember that, there was a God, We used to say our prayers. Mum would say, as kids, we'd always say prayers, and not that we were, greatly indulged with religion, but we knew there was a God, and we worshipped. We said Our Father, the Our Father and all that sort of stuff. And
it wasn't too great a leap to become a Catholic.
No, not really. Although I think at that time there was a bit of resentment, between the Protestants and the Catholics.
Very much so, yeah.
Because the Catholics were not allowed to. Well, not allowed to. They were not supposed to go to a Protestant church, and likewise the Protestants wouldn't go to a Catholic church, you know. But yeah, there was always that little bit of antagonism. I think it was because of the Reformation and all that sort of stuff, you know. I think it was Henry VIII, wasn't it? He gave the Pope away because he had 8 wives, didn't he? He had 6 wives.
Yeah, wanted a divorce.
That was a no-no. You know, the divorce is just not on. It's changed. You know, it has changed.
Back on the Teachers College, I'm looking at a photo here actually, and A-grade netball in 1944.
That's right. Yeah. We had. That's who was it? This girl here. She was. I have forgotten her name. They were very wealthy people that lived up just out of Adelaide. Yeah, Woodness Church of England Grammar School. Joy Mahaffey, she was from Narra Court. Barbara Begg. I got the nod to go in the A grade at that time, and yeah.
Which was basketball then?
That was basketball. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But Woodness Church of England Grammar School. That was Miss Millington. I remember was the headmaster at that time. And she was pretty, and she was a very astute woman, and she used to have an office, and we'd walk past the office and she'd always be smoking, you know. Smoking was quite acceptable in those days, and yeah, Miss Millington, she was very strict, but she just loved having a fag every now and again, so it was human in that respect.
So you were living with the Mudgers in Adelaide?
With Jessie Mudge.
So what did you get up to in Adelaide? Did you go to the nightclubs and carry on and like your granddaughters did, or? No.
It was strictly we were very respectful. We in those days we used to love to go to dances and all that sort of stuff. And then Jessie Mudge, that was during the war years, and the Red Cross was. The Red Cross was a means of raising money for the soldiers and all that sort of stuff. And I remember Jessie used to send me up into Rundle Street, and I'd have to sell badges in Rundle Street. How old was I then? About 18 or 19, and I'd be, you know, would you like to buy a badge, you know, up in Rundle Street? And, oh gosh, I hated doing it, but I had to do it. And
did you sell many?
Well, yeah, I was getting better at it, you know, because Jessie was quite good. Was quite one of the Red Cross ladies, and then they were having a Red Cross ball, and so that she told me that I had to be the. I haven't got a photograph here. I've got. Yeah, the Red Cross had a ball, and I had to represent the Glenelg Red Cross people. So she brought me in because Jessie was a wealthy lady. They owned, and she had this huge house in 5 Maturin Road, Glenelg, and when she died, she didn't have any children, and when she died, she left that house to the she left it to some organisation that it's now run by it's in 5 Maturin Road, Glenelg. It's run by I think it's the Church of England or something like that, and it's a rest home now. And it was because they owned, she was a Murray, and they owned property up at sheep stations. They had, there was more Kitterby, Kandulka station, they owned that. So she was wealthy, she had plenty of money, no children. And when she died, she left her home to this charity. So yes, that was interesting. So what else were you saying? Yeah.
I think Rick was going to turn the page, is that right?
We were going to, I had something over there I was going to refer to. Come back to that in a minute. What about when you were posted to Woodner? there's a few names that still live about here that were your first students.
Yes, well, there were Barry Wilkins.
Bet taught me in grade 2.
How was she?
Terrific. Yeah, terrific. Yeah, she's still going strong.
Pat Hines and yeah, there were. Yeah, but when I was here in 1945, they just had the one school. There was no secondary school here. I was just trying to think the other day, where did those kids go?
Well, it became wasn't it like a local school, but then it became an area school about that time?
It became an area school. 1945, it was just a primary school. And then I was away for 2 years, and when I came back, they'd built the area school started then.
So all the little little schools around that area. How many teachers at Woodner?
Well, when I was here, there was Clem Lowby. He was the only teacher, and I was the junior teacher. And that was in 45, and that's when the war. Let me think. Yeah, the war had started, and it was a drought. I remember we used to go out at recess time. Every Friday, I think we used to have a hot north wind. It was drought, and there was a lot of sand dunes around, out home. I think when we were soon after we were married, there was so much sand that they had to do a detour, past because of the drift and what have you. So that was a drought in 45. And what else did you say?
How many teachers there?
And then when the area school came back, there were about 5 or 6. They had a craft school, and yeah, they had secondary stuff there. And I don't remember how many kids were at school, but certainly more. They had. Well, before they had the area school, there used to be a school at Pidery, a school at Yananee, there was little schools everywhere. A school at Kinecutter, and there were. Because that's where the kids, I don't know where they were. I suppose when they got to secondary school, they either went to college or stayed home. But they didn't have the chance to have an education in those days. Yeah. So yeah, and that was good, and that's why I think there were so many teachers who, they were. Well, in this locality, there would have been the Woodner Primary School, and as I said, there's one at Pidery, Yananee, out the north out here had a school, and there'd be school teachers at each time, and therefore often that school teacher stayed here because they married a farmer. That's how it all happened. Yeah.
And just going back to Streaky Bay, with your grandparents, like the Speeds and the Montgomerys.
Yeah. Well, the Speeds...
Give us some recollections about them, because I don't know much
Well,
about
the Speeds, they had a property about 7 miles out of Streaky Bay, and that was primarily wheat, sheep and what have you. And John Speed and Rosalie, they had 11 children. My mother was one of 11. And I had a photograph here of them, and they were farmers, and good farmers. They had, worked hard. I recall I used to go down and stay with Grandma because she was elderly, and I'd have to help. I was only about 14 or 15 then. I'd go down for holidays, and the boys, the boys would have to get up at about 6 o'clock in the morning and feed their horses, because that's when they had the horses. They were the
horse and cart
means
days
of towing the strippers and the cultivators, put the wheat and what have. So they'd get up early in the morning and go and feed their horses and come back, and I'd have to help Grandma give them breakfast, and you'd have to pack them a lunch and all that sort of stuff. And then they wouldn't get home. And same with Dad at Chilbernunda. I recall we had horses when I was only a kid, And Mum would go out perhaps 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, and she'd be listening and waiting to see if the horses were going home, because there were lots of accidents then. You know, the horses would bolt and people were often badly injured. I think some of the people around here had an accident. I think one of the limbs has carried an accident that he'd had through falling off the plough or something and the horse running over him. Yeah, so that was the Speeds. Grandpa Speed was a district chairman of the district council. Quite clever, had a brain, and they were hard workers. I used to love going down there because they'd have, there was so much, the eggs and it was I enjoyed going down to Grandma's, because we were the only, Pat and I were the twins, and we were a bit spoilt. Christmas time was a time we'd always go there, and then they had built a tennis court, and we'd have a game of tennis, only a sand court, but they were interested in sport and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, good. I loved the Speed family. They were hard-working pioneers of the district up there. And then on the Montgomerie side, Dad had, there were 8 boys. Grandma had no girls, 8 boys, and they were all big, strong, healthy, good-looking fellows. 2 of them went to the the war. Uncle Jack and Uncle Bert went to the 1945 war. The 1919.
First World War.
The First World War, they were there. And then in the 45, Bert went he enlisted in the Second World War. And Jack Montgomerie married a Scotch girl. That was in the First World War, and because I think he was injured, and he met her. She was a nurse and a Scottish lady, and she eventually came out here to Chandida. Chandida.
Straight from England,
Yes,
or from Scotland, yeah.
It was a bit of a, yeah. So and they, because a lot of them Grandma had 8 boys, but there were large families in those days. Most of the people had big families.
And Palubi. Did you spend time out there?
Yeah, well, Palubi is about 7 miles away from Chilpanunda, and that's where we would go for sporting events. But we couldn't go because we had cows and pigs, and we couldn't go away because we had the people at home, Yeah, so that Palubi was New Year's Eve sports was at Palubi every New Year's Day, and that's when they had horse racing on the beach, and all sorts of games. Yeah, that was the social activity. There were more people, more country people, because now there's less farmers now, and that's, I think, what made life interesting, because there were so many farmers and farmers' wives and what have you.
They all had farm hands. 5
hands and lots of kids, and so many different little schools everywhere. But now you think here in our district, there's the next door neighbours bought there's less farmers, aren't there? And although I suppose there's more people living in Woodness now than there was when I first came here, because
but less on the periphery.
Less on the farms. But I often wonder. Well, now people are coming here now and retiring because we've got the good facilities, haven't we? We've got a good hospital and we've got a doctor. So now that's why people are deciding to retire in Woodness rather than Port Lincoln.
Back to Grandpa Mont, he was into horse racing?
Grandpa, yeah, he always loved his horses. He used to have jumps. I remember he used to ride over the jumps, and yeah, he had interest in a couple of horses, and
So when you went away to school in Adelaide, what transport was that at that time?
Well, that time, let me think. Well, we went to school with a horse and cart. I think they had a tourer car, you know, a car that had sideboards and all that sort of stuff, and they'd have to. Well, rather a primitive. What was the name of the car in those days? And then I know the first sedan that Dad got was, we felt we were so posh, you know, driving in a sedan car. That would have been, I suppose, after the war, people got to the idea of transporting in. Moving around in a motor car rather than a horse and cart. But we used to go to, the dances used to be at the old Kurula Hall, and there was, and even here in Woodner, I mean years ago, they'd still had the horse and cart, and some of the people that wanted a bit of fun, the horse and people had come in a horse and cart and tied up at the hall, and some of the local jokers would get the horse one side, they'd move the horse and cart, they'd put the horse on one side of the fence and the cart on the other side of the fence, and then that was a bit of a humbug when a person wanted to go home because the horse was on the wrong side of the fence. That was some of the local silly people, and the local.
So talking of local silly people,
yeah.
Well, I know that Dad was one of them.
Yeah, he loved. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, and there were lots of fun. I remember we used to have the milk round, and at that time they were putting the new bitumen road through to Kimber.
To the air highway.
To the air highway, and it used to. As a bypass, well, no, building the bypass used to come past our place out at Jamonti. And Dad, because this is when we had the milk round, so Dad's decided to put a notice up this side and that side, people coming this way would see it, and people coming this way on the dirt road. Mm. And he'd put up fresh cold milk. Mm. And so one New Year's Eve, for a joke, Ray Barnes came along and he changed the signs on both sides, and he had fresh old milky. Instead of fresh cold milk, he'd changed it to fresh old milky. That was a bit of a joke. They were always doing funny jokes.
So did you get many people calling in off that?
Yeah, it was amazing the number of people. Often they'd call in and we'd have cold milk in the fridge, you know, down at the dairy. And they'd come and, quite a few would call in, and I think, there was, because we're right close to the road. Yes, that was, anything to get a few. But I remember you saying once, because you missed out on a lot of the dairying, didn't you? Did you wear the dairy when you were there?
Yeah, but it pretty much finished when we started school.
And we used to, they'd pay their money, you know, and I remember you saying, Mum, I think we've got lots of money, haven't we?
Well,
I remember you saying, because we had, you know, you'd have the money in the end. Mum, I think we have got lots of money, you know.
Hmm. Well,
we had a little bit.
I'd probably just heard all through my life that we were poor, but I could see all this money.
Well, it was in change, that's right. There's nothing like small change to really, like, you know, boost up a kid's sense of worth. But so how many, did you obviously hand milk to start with?
No.
Oh, you always had a machine?
I hated milking cow. My mother, she used to milk cows, and she used to get under the cow and I hated milking a cow. I thought, the cow's going to kick me. I hated milk. So when when I was first married, I probably had to milk a cow, but we had the milking machines, and that was wonderful, you know. But my mother and my grandmother, they would milk the cow, and I know Mum used to. We used to have to separate the milk, and she'd sell the cream, put it out take it to Kundjana, where there was a train, and they'd they'd sell their cream, put it in cream cans, that's right, about 3-gallon cream cans, and send them to Port Lincoln, and they'd make that into butter, and then that'd be a little bit of money for the housewife, you know, because money was not plentiful. We were self-sufficient in so many ways, you know. We had our own chooks and pigs, and Dad would kill a sheep, and we were self-sufficient in that way. And I think the only thing we used to buy on the mail car the mail would be delivered to a mailbox, and we used to get flour and sugar in bulk, you know. So the farmers' wives were self-sufficient, really. Didn't have to. I think we only went to the shops in Streaky Bay, which were when we were kids, for just to perhaps once a month, and that was quite an adventure, because it was, you know, to go to a shop was quite an exciting experience, you know. So, yeah, things were good in those days. I think they were good days. I think we've had a good life. I think good life. Yeah.
So in 10th of May 1949, you got married.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Well, prior to getting married, we were to get married in the Catholic Church, right? So I became a Catholic, and in those days you'd have nuptial mass before a marriage, and that meant you couldn't have communion after. You had to fast. That's right. You had to fast before you could have communion in the Catholic Church. So anyone that were having a nuptial mass had to have a 9 o'clock mass. So I remember I went into Streaky Bay, and Bill Mudge, we're related to the Mudges, and so Bill said, well, you can stay here. So Pat was my maid of honour, matron of honour, and then my 2 girlfriends from school girls, Helen Cochran and Betty Hannon, were my bridesmaids. So we had, I stayed the night at the Flinders Hotel that Bill Mudge owned, and then we had 9 o'clock church at the St Canute's Church in Streaky Bay.
Was this because often back then the weddings were midweek?
Yeah, mainly midweek, and we had to fast, of course. You couldn't, because we were having nuptial mass, you had to fast. So there was no, and then after that, after the ceremony, you'd have to have a breakfast somewhere. So Mum provided her relatives provided a morning tea at the hall, I recall, for the bridal party and what have you. And then after that you'd have a big show at night, you know, a reception at night. And I remember on this day, we went after the morning, when we were married, we went out to the back beach, and I got sunburnt, and then I had to get dressed up for the evening ceremony at the Institute at Streaky Bay. And I think I had a red nose and what have you, and I was tired. Get up early. Oh, I was worn out. But a big reception, you know, they'd invite about 200 people to the hall, and Mum would have friends and sisters that provide the supper, and you know, you'd have all the bridesmaids, and someone would propose a toast to the bride and bridegroom and the bride's parents and all this blah blah blah. It was quite an occasion, and there were.
That's why you only did it once.
Dance. Sorry.
That's why you only did it once.
Yeah, that's right. And then I'd be they'd invite about 200 people to the hall, the reception. You know, it was a big affair. Yeah, and then yeah, and that's, I recall then that was when was that? 1940. Yeah, because we only had the one car, the Fargo car, and so Jim took the bride and bridegroom down to Port Kenny, and then we went off on our honeymoon. I think we went off. We spent the first night at the Port Kenny pub, and then we went on the bus service to Port Lincoln, and in those days you'd have to get on the Minnipa and go across to Adelaide. That was the means of transport then. And then we went to Kangaroo Island for our honeymoon. So yeah, we went overseas for our honeymoon. We went to Kangaroo Island. Yeah, that was the big thing in those days. Yeah.
Well, the terrific thing is that it hasn't changed.
Sorry?
It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed, no.
The rest of the world has, but Kangaroo Island
Kangaroo Island
has stayed the same, which is terrific.
It's changed last year. It was those fires.
Oh, well, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible fires, weren't they? I was trying to order some a fruit tree, and they say the girl at Kaz was saying that they're finding difficulty in getting fruit trees in now because the demand from Kangaroo Island's been quite great because you know I've lost so much over there. Dreadful fires. Gosh, yeah, you know we've really got it. It's banged on, hasn't it, with the fires this year and this virus. Australia's having a really bad time.
We'll be reading a lot of books with 2020 in the title.
Yeah.
Sorry?
We'll be reading a lot of books with 2020 in the title. Now, this one here, I just don't want you to knock. Oh, there we go. It's clicked on there now. Okay, good.
Right.
So this is some of the Bois crew. So Grandma and Grandpa, Bill and Minnie.
Bill and Minnie. Well, Minnie was a school teacher. Actually, in the Gardner family, I think three of her sisters were school teachers, and Minnie apparently came here as a school teacher and married Bill, and Bill was quite a bit older than Minnie, and they were farming out at where Jim and you, out of the farmhouse, and then her sister was a Gardner, and her sister was Eileen Byrne.
And was she a teacher too, Auntie Eileen?
Eileen, no, she was a music teacher, Eileen. Yeah, the Gardners were quite, I think about 3 or 4 of them were school teachers. They were quite intelligent people. And I recall I used to say to Des that the reason I married you was because when I came here as a teacher, I was really fascinated with Eileen Byrne. Eileen was Nana's sister, and she used to play the piano, and lovely, beautiful pianist, and a lovely lady. She was so, Alf and Eileen and all their kids, you know, the Byrnes kids, Des was really fond of them. They were his cousins, and I was fond of them, and I think I used to say, that's why I married you, because I really liked your relatives. I really felt that her relatives were really nice people. So that was that's why he got a tick.
What? Did you have a few lining up?
Sorry?
Did you have a few lining up that you had to sort through?
Yeah, 1 or 2. Yeah, I mean, So the guide was, you know, they sort of were people from Franklin Harbour, and I think there was quite a lot of, I think there were about 8 or 9 Gardner people, and you know they were quite an intelligent mob. A lot of them were school teachers. Not that certainly school teachers are not the highest rank of intelligentsia in the world, but they were, you know, they were good people, and I still have a lot of regard for them. Yeah.
So Grandma and Grandpa were down where Rhino is.
Yes.
And when you were married, did you move straight into the old place, like Gemonti there?
Well, when Jim was in the Air Force, and when he finished when the war ended, I think he got a bit of a a handout. I think the returned soldiers got help with property, owning property, and I think he got a nod for where we were. And when we were to be married, Des said, well, I'm not going to go out to Oozawatsit, I want to stay here. So that's why we came to farm there. And Jim was in partnership with us. And then when we were married, that's where Des said, well, I'm not leaving, I'm staying here on the farm. So that's why we stayed there. And of course, Jim and Eugene never married, so it sort of worked out okay in that respect. Yeah, but I think a lot of the returned soldiers got a bit of a handout to help them get re-established, you know, after the war. Yeah, yeah. And of course Eugene, he then decided he was going to go overseas. I remember we went to mass one morning, and Eugene said, well, I'm leaving. Where are you going? I'm going to England. That was Eugene, and he went to England. I think he was in England for about 8 years. So what he did over there, I'm blowed if I know. I know Nana used to get quite upset. Well, I haven't heard from Eugene, you know, wonder what he's doing. But I don't know what Huey did, but he was clever he was a clever, he got very good marks at Ross Trevor, but he was just one of himself.
Wanted to do his own thing.
Did his own thing, yeah, and ended up, you know, but having. He had quite a residue, didn't he, of money, didn't he? When he, you know, in that all your kids benefited from his estate, and that's what he would have wanted. Dear old Huey.
So, Dad and Grandpa were right into their music, so that obviously would have. Yeah, well,
Mrs. McMahon, we built the farm was owned by McMahons, and she was a school teacher, I think, and she used to play the piano, and that's when they started the band. That's in the war years, and yeah, they've always liked their music.
So they would have played far and wide, I guess?
Yeah, well, I know even after we were married, Des would be playing the saxophone up at, you know, at Streaky Bay. There'd be a ball on, because there used to be Catholic balls and Red Cross balls. There used to be just about a ball just about every Wednesday during the year, you know. That was the means of people meeting people were at the dances, and they were quite prominent.
But they used to have them mainly on a Wednesday?
They'd have the balls. They used to have the Masonic balls and the Catholic balls of a Wednesday, yeah, usually. And there'd be the debutante balls and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, music was, well, Des always, yeah, they like Eileen, and a lot of the guiders had the piano. And a piano in most homes, there was always a piano. You know, the Speeds had a piano, and we had a piano when we were young. So that was their way of entertaining or keeping themselves entertained.
So did you ever travel away on the band trips?
No. I
had to stay home.
I stayed home with the children, but Des used to have to, and that was a means of earning a bit of money too. I mean, they used to get paid, you know, I don't know how much, but it was a pocket money for them, and they enjoyed doing it, because around here there'd be, I've forgotten now, they used to have what band, McCormick bands were quite famous, and the band, there used to be a saxophone, a pianist, a saxophone, a drummer, and probably someone playing the violin, and the Hareen band was when I was younger, that Hareen band used to be, and the McCormick band were people that used to earn a few dollars through supplying the music.
I remember Dad saying they used to have dancers out on top of the tanks at Polder.
That's right. I didn't experience that, and I think that was a bit primitive. Would have been very primitive, but it was a way of people meeting people, and that seemed to how people used to coexist or enjoy life. And yeah, dancing and football were the main means of entertainment in those days. Yeah. Yeah, but the music's always been good. I mean, all you kids have enjoyed your music, haven't you? Yeah. Yeah.
I see there's a invitation to a 21st there.
Yeah. Well, that was at Chilpanunda. That was in 48, 20th of August 48. I would have been 48, let me think. Yeah, that's when I was here, 45, yeah. First came to Woodner, Mum. Well, that's when, now it's 18, people they get the ticket 18 years old to be independent and do what they like. 21 used to be the crowning point. Most people would find that was the time to celebrate, but now they've reduced the age a bit. Yeah. So what else have we got here?
Can you, point out who the people are in the photographs? Would be a good idea.
This one? Or this one?
Perhaps your mum could point them to them and give us some names.
The names, what, of here? Well, that's Des, and that's his father, Bill. Des' grandpa. He used to. I don't know what he used to play. What's that? That's the thing.
Looks like some sort of horn instrument.
I reckon that'd be Rashley, I think.
Gordon Rashley, yep.
Yeah, Gordon Rashley, Eileen McMahon, she was the people that was in Jumonte before we went there. There's Gordon Rashley, Rob Haynes and Bill Bois. Yeah, that's Bill, that's Grandpa. Yeah. Yeah, well they used to, music was a great part of life in those days, yeah. That's
part of the crew. That one. I've got Charlie and Auntie Maud there.
Charlie and Maud, yeah. Well, Chess was the post office. He owned the post office at Woodner postal man, and they had Pat and Mick were their two boys, and Charlie used to have to take the mail across to the railway station, and the train would come up quite frequently. That was the only means of getting the mail up, I think, or all the produce away. So Pat and Mick were 12 months apart, and they were fellas, and they went over with Chess, and but when Charlie, and there used to be a comfort stop over there. People would serve meals at the railway station. So Charlie, it was time to go home, and Charlie couldn't find the boys, and they'd got on the train, and the train had gone down to Lock. So there was they had to send out a search party to get the two boys off the train.
So obviously back then the train used to carry passengers. So.
Yeah. Well, Des and I, when we went for our honeymoon, we went across on the Minnipa and came back to Port Lincoln, and then came up on the train. That was the the essential way of people coming and goods going from the country people.
And when would that have stopped?
Well, they used to have little railway houses here. I suppose that would have stopped, oh gosh, I can't really remember now, but many years ago. But most of the, there were little sidings everywhere. And like there was Woodner, then there was Yananee, Minnipa, Yantanabe. They'd all be little towns along the railway, and each of those towns would have a hall and a football club, and that was a little essential part of and a place where there was a shop people could the farmers could buy there.
They used to bring water by the train in the early days.
Yeah, they possibly did.
Before the pipe was through.
And there'd be wheat stacks, and the railways were a very important part of life. I'm sorry that they've closed the railway tracks. Really sorry. Yeah. I think the CWA this year put in a report saying how disappointed they were that they've closed the railway line. I think that's a thing of the past now, unfortunately.
Apparently even you mentioned Kurila?
Kurila.
They used to have a little football club and basketball, which they used to play social games. Is that right?
They did. There was a Kurila Hall, and Mrs. Johnson she was the postmistress there, and when we were at the farmers around Chilpinunda, for example, where we lived, she used to we had a party line, and now she used to ring us through the party line. Remember, 2 shorts and a long, we'd answer the phone, and then the Hareens would have a long and 2 shorts or something like that, and we could speak to each other on the telephone. And I think some people used to eavesdrop. You could eavesdrop if you wanted to, and listen in, but that we were good
Wasn't
people.
the protocol.
We didn't do that, and Mum wouldn't let us do that. But yes, she had Kurila Hall was where we used to have church once a month. The Anglicans would go there once a month, and we had a football team and a cricket team and a school there. Yeah, it was just town. One of those. But that's. Oh, I don't know. As I said, there's no farmers. There's so many empty farmers' houses around now, which an empty, Piedry used to have a shop. Yananee had a shop, and there'd be shops all along those lines, and more people because there were people owned smaller properties and had large families and were self-sufficient in so many ways. It's a changing world,
Over the years you've been involved in Over the years you've been involved in
Well, I've always been...
different community groups, and obviously the community club and Bowls Club and hospital.
Yeah.
Tell us about
Yeah, well, I've always enjoyed sport. I know I just love sport, even though I'm still playing bowls. Hopefully I can still play bowls. I think sport's been a part of my life that I've enjoyed, and it's a part of a community. We've got to have sport. I think it's sad now that we're not having, this pandemic's given sport away in our area, hasn't it? Which is a pity for all people, Sport's a very essential part of people's livelihoods and interests and meeting people.
So with the community club, you were involved in the early days of getting that?
The community club, yes. Well, I think, well, Tom, yeah, I've written a story about that. Now, how did that happen? I think there was a bit of, I know the hotelier didn't like the idea of a community club. And what did we have prior to that? I can't remember. What
There was nothing else
nothing
over
there. Yeah, the show. Yeah, it was Tom Hines, and some of them thought, right, let's get this community built. And there was opposition. First of all, they had to get a permit from the council to get the land made freehold, I think, so they could build the hall. And there was a lot of opposition. Some of the opposition came from the Protestant churches, because for the Methodist church, for example, it was, you know, alcohol was a no-no there. Many of them were teetotalers, and I think they thought that if there was going to be a bar over there, well, that was a cardinal sin to have a bar.
Because it was one of the first clubs in the district, wasn't it?
Yes,
like no one else had clubs at this stage.
No. But I think that was there was a bit of antagonism there, and even though, you know, I think the chairman of the sports club over there, he was one who didn't like the idea of having a bar. So, but anyway, there was finally it got built, and now who opened it? He was a prominent footballer, wasn't he?
John Cale.
John Cale. He came over for the opening, and that was a great affair. There was, it's been a boom to us, I think, here. And the cricket pitch, you know, that was one of the first turf cricket pitches. Turf cricket pitch was quite unique.
Well, good enough to host the English.
Yeah, I remember having there was a big occasion here, wasn't there, for cricket?
State country versus England.
That's right. Yeah, that was an occasion. No, it's been a boon, I think, to the country, and now like Warramboo have got, you know, they've all sort of built up, and I don't know how did they get the money to build it? I've forgotten now. We raised money, didn't we?
Well, they did sell bricks.
Yeah, that's right. Bricks. Yeah, that's right. Then built. Yeah, no, that's been a good asset here, and I think the public, and Johnny Fedoni, he was a little bit opposed to it. John Pilati. I think naturally the bar people thought, you know, the hoteliers thought, right, this is going to take a little bit of money away from us. But yeah, I think they've worked in quite happily now.
And another place that you spent a lot of time was at Ramblers Golf.
The Ramblers Golf Club is still functioning. I think they tell me they've got about 14 members down there, and that was initially a 9-hole course, and then I recall we decided that we used to go golfing at other places where they had 18 holes, which was a better proposition for golfers. Yes, I recall we had at that stage, sometimes they had about 30 women playing bowls down there. That's when we had many farmers' wives around, and the farmers' wives were not were their own bosses, I suppose. They weren't employed anywhere else apart from their farm. So they were able to play golf, yeah. And as I said, there were more farmers' wives then, and it was a time when the women were more or less stay-at-home women, looked after their house and their family, and their husbands were the
breadwinners.
The breadwinners, that's the word. And yeah, it was great, and we had women come I think initially we had a coach. We used to bring a coach over every year, and this particular coach helped us to get the idea of mapping out the course and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that was good, and thank goodness it's still thriving, even though there's no women playing. As I said, at one time we had about 26 women playing golf, but now there's no women are playing, because another reason, there's not so many farmers' wives around, and the women were not relying on their husband for support. They were their own, used after they have kids in the house, but now they are working hard. Yeah, it's a shame because it's a good course, and actually I only heard yesterday where Tumby Bay, yes, Tumby Bay are having a special golf for people on a certain handicap. It's going to be a big event. I think I heard that in the wireless the other day at Tumby. It's going to be people from all over the state are going to be invited down there for a premier golf competition. Yeah, so yeah, but yeah, we've got a really good course, and we went down there not that long ago, and they've planting more trees down there, and people are maintaining it, and it's good. Trouble is that at one stage we thought we'd try and get a 3-holer up here at Woodner to give the kids a chance to play, because kind cutters, they've got to be taken there, you know, whereas we had a course here that where the children could adapt.
Get a taste.
Get a taste. Because it is, Streaky Bay, they've got their course handy right within the town, and they're still operating up there more successfully, but they're still going down here, which is good. Yeah.
And you were instrumental in the hospital board for a long time.
Yeah.
So back then, was it their role to bring doctors and the like over, or how did that work?
Let me think. We had a hospital board, and I can't remember why we were there, but maybe to, well, I don't know, try to employ doctors.
I can remember you were involved in the placement of the first surgery, because Peter Gardner had to do some consulting on that.
Yeah, the new.
Well, it was new then, but
yeah.
It's now been.
Yes. We used to be involved with the administration of the hospital. We had a hospital board. Dennis Borland was there. I don't know. I remember one occasion the matron of the board sacked all the nurses. I don't know for what reason. I remember Dennis came in and said, what are you doing? You know, I don't know why, but she sacked all the nurses. So Dennis had to come in and
smooth the waters.
Smooth the waters. So yeah, there were characters. I think now, I don't know, it's, I know the money, they used to have a quota, you know, so much, the hospital's got this much money to spend, and
I was chairman for the first 4 years, and it was a bit of a challenge, but it was good. But we were rebuilding the hospital, and there were a lot of decisions to be made, and there was a bit of conflict at times, but it was good because we did the right thing, got the right thing, I think. But those days, of course, money was short. You didn't have money running out of the walls like it is at the minute. And I can remember we had about $300,000 to rebuild the hospital, and at the same time Narracourt rebuilt their hospital and borrowed $900,000. And I thought, you know, how the hell are they going to handle that? Of course, the government came along and gave them the money. So we were stupid. We should have borrowed it all and asked the government for the handout afterwards, but that's the way of the world.
It was interesting to see how it all worked out, and there was one occasion where one of the doctors, I can still remember, I won't elaborate too much on this story, but he had an affair with someone in the town, and he had to face up to the board and say, you know, I've done the wrong thing, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a little bit of a hush-hush sort of a business, but they are human after all, these doctors. They do, you know, mediate, you know, do the wrong thing after a while, but yeah.
But certainly the hospital board wasn't just a medical board.
No, they had to, the managers, the employers.
Yeah, but I think we're so lucky that we've got Scott here. You know, he's been here now for, oh gosh, it must be 10 years or more.
Be more probably.
He came as a student doctor with someone, and he liked
Wolf Duplessis.
Wolf, yeah. But I think that's why, you know, that Woodner is what Woodner is now. To think that we've got a doctor that's willing to stay here and likes being here, and he's got the fact that he's got an aeroplane, and we've got the. I think that's another thing that we're thankful for that they had, you know. Peter Byrne and some of the airmen, you know, at those days you've got Kev Barnes got that airport going. I think that's been a real boon to the town, and Scott having his own plane too. It makes it easier for him and better living for him to, you know, fly people in and out. And the Flying Doctor, I think. Gosh, I don't know, I think I've had 3 trips on the Flying Doctor and Des and so many. Oh, that Flying Doctor's a boon, I think, to people here.
Can I ask one little question in there? That fella who took that old footage, which we haven't got time to show now, but what was that?
Max Oswald. So we've got some footage that Max did, and it was about the 50s, wasn't it? Early 50s.
Oh, well, actually 1959, actually.
Yeah. So where he's filmed the. So it was the opening of the hall when the marching girls and.
Oh yes, yeah.
Do you remember?
I remember Mary Howard. You know, Mary was with us for about 8 years. Mary Howard, and she was one of the marching girls. This is Mary. She was a girl from
Piri or Whyalla.
Whyalla, and her parents, and as a young girl she went up to the Bascom's at Streaky Bay, and when I had quite a few children, and one of the priests said, Mary Howard, she's looking for another position, she likes going helping, so Mary came and lived with us for about 8 years, and then she ended up becoming a nun. I think she found out what married life was all about with us and 8 kids. And Mary...
And kids, God.
And now she still rings us up. She's still in Port Pirie. She's been a nun in Port Pirie for years, and she'll often ring me up, Betty, what are you doing now, you know? And she's always been interested in her. Actually, she was Jeff's, Jeff, the son that we lost, she was Jeff's godmother. And dear old Mary, she's always kept in touch with us, hasn't she, over the years?
So was she one of the marching girls at the time, was she?
She was one of the marching girls, yes. I've got a photograph of her here. Yeah, that was, there's lots of little, with the marching girls, and then they used to have what did they used to have at the show just a few years ago? The girls dancing, they had some, I've forgotten what they were called, but there's always some little cult that goes on and then it fades out again. Like bridge, for example. Gosh, we used to have a wonderful bridge club here for years and years and years, but suddenly that's all gone, you know, we're not playing bridge anymore. And we've had an interesting life, lots of interesting things.
Without dwelling on them too often, this is a heap of your grandchildren.
Oh, okay.
Some recollections there as you go through them?
Let me think. Where are we? That's Nicholas. He was Restaurant Rules. He was well known. Well, you know, Australia wide they had this
My Restaurant
Rules thing. Yeah, and I've got a lot of interesting grandchildren. Even your son, young Nels, he's interesting that he's a music lover and now done his he's got his Bachelor of Music, didn't he, at the university, and now he's in Germany. Unemployed, I suppose, with the
He's a muso.
He's a musician that's unemployed and cleaning windows. I remember, you know, that there used to be that thing. Do you remember, what was his name? He was a film star and he used to sing, "When I'm cleaning windows." I forgot, who was that? Anyway, a musician is very versatile in many respects. Yeah, well, I've got some really interesting grandchildren. They've all featured in lots of different things, haven't they? Sophie's in, she's in
Melbourne.
In Melbourne, and her husband, he's a doctor, and he was to go to the Olympic Games, wasn't he, as a trainer. He was the doctor for Hawthorn Football Club for a number of years, but he came over to my party and they said, right, you weren't there, so you haven't got the position. He didn't get re-elected as their doctor.
He didn't stand there.
Yeah.
But he
went, yeah.
So he was due to go as the doctor for
the rowing.
Rowing, that's right.
Yeah. And then we got Dolores Devine down in Port Lincoln. That's Tony. Tony's wife, Karen. She's runs that, having been a Ljubljana, wasn't she? The Ljubljana had a winery at Marook, and now Ljubljana. I think her brother's in Tasmania now, and he's built up quite a reputation for champagne, hasn't he? Got the Ljubljana champagne. Yeah, got lots of little interesting people in life. Yeah.
Seems to be mostly about Nick in here. He was obviously in the news the most.
Oh, Nick, yeah, and my restaurant Raw.
Oh, Tom here doing a bit of modelling.
Oh yeah, Thomas. Well, Tom's now he's got a voice, hasn't he? He's doing well in his opera. Yeah, and they were going to do a tour this year of Eyre Peninsula, but because of this virus now, they've had to do it. But Tom, apparently he's got a voice. His tutor was, who was his tutor? A well-known singer?
Thomas
Edmonds.
Yeah.
Thomas Edmonds. I remember Catherine, Tom's mum, saying they went and listened to Tom sing, and she said both she and Thomas Edmonds cried when they heard Tom giving his rendition. So he must have quite a good voice if he can make his teacher cry. Yeah.
Yes, we got Carla here modelling. So Sue would love to know that she's taken after, because Sue was Miss Venus Bay, whereas Carla's Miss Chenorama.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Meredith was Miss Venus Bay too, so they were a bit light on that year, obviously.
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, a few of them had a go at the winning money on the TV shows, I think.
Yeah, on Eddie Maguire. Yeah, well, Sophie.
4 of them.
What's her name? One.
Has to be a millionaire.
Yeah. Well, actually, the CWA have got a birthday party at the motel next year, and I'm doing a Eddie Maguire show. I'm trying to get some questions ready to do a Eddie Maguire show down there. Yeah.
It's mainly.
Who's that? Oh, it's Rick and Emily. Right.
Yeah. We're probably nearly out of time, but you said all the kids went away to school. What's your memories of the kids being away at college?
Well, I know Chris, for example. He was at Rostrevor, wasn't he? All the kids went to Rostrevor,
The girls went to.
The girls went to.
Sue went to Mercedes. And
Mercedes. Now they went to Loreto. We decided that we wanted the kids to move away from Woodner, you know, and to see the world, which I think they've benefited from doing that. And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah.
Broaden their horizons. Yes.
Sorry?
Broaden their horizons.
Broaden their horizon. And yeah, I think they've benefited from that. Now, what were you going to say, Rick?
or just your memories of when the kids were away at college?
Well, I remember.
Stand out, like who did you have to go and pick up because they were suspended?
No, I don't think any of them got anything. But I remember Chris and who's that little fellow? Chris.
Ben Chan.
Ben Chan. They decided that when they were at Rostrevor, they decided to hitchhike home. I nearly freaked out when I heard that. And they had quite an experience, I think, in hitchhiking home. So, yeah, they do all sorts of things that their grandmothers would turn in the grave if they knew about it. But, yeah, I've had an interesting life and I'm going to keep on having an interesting life, I think. So I've never been to London, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I can see them on TV.